Chapter 14. Closing Remarks. In this treatise, I attempted to provide an objective moral theory regarding the production of capital. The objectivity of capital is critical to its moral application to guiding action. I believe the objectivity of capital is a strength to its moral use in guiding our actions, especially for society at large, because we can measure the capital on the whole of society, unlike other, more subjective moral imperatives like utility, pleasure, happiness, and freedom. Not that these things are unimportant, but that they are quite difficult to calculate objectively. This can be quite true for the individual as well, and individual decision-making. Based on our knowledge of nature and our power over it, we can calculate the capital produced by a series of actions and take the path that leads to the greatest capital produced. We pursue the truth so that we can then apply it to improving our lives. I attempted to extrapolate the concept of capital to the human being, arguing that the human being is a very significant, yet currently unmeasured, form of capital within society. By applying the concept of capital to human beings, a moral theory based on the production of capital does not simply ignore the outcomes to human beings in determining moral actions, but takes the capital of human beings into account along with all of property. Clearly, non-human property is also important to our lives and shouldn't be ignored in our moral decision-making. The property we use every day in making life enjoyable, understandable, controllable, and worth living. Should not all of property be considered when we make decisions individually and collectively? Capital is a way with which we can quantify such important life and property. For as much as I have tried to perfect and improve upon this moral treatise, there is still much left to understand and realize. Among these concepts to be further pursued include 1. Constitutional ways of preventing conflict of interest from those who derive their income from government and their suffrage within it. 2. Theories of price indices and the best ways to quantify inflation and deflation to properly adjust the measurement of capital over time. 3. Addressing refinements to the NPV approximation of capital for human beings. What is the proper time interval to determine the net income of both the individual and that of society? What if the capital of society were to stop growing? The NPV approximation would break down, and a different form of the equation would need to be used. 4. Better quantifying the societal growth of the capital of human beings in determining total capital and capital growth of society. 5. How to keep account of the capital of public property. Like human beings, there isn't much of an active market for public property, and as such, it lacks a fairly objective way of quantifying it utilizing traditional methods of accounting. But clearly, public property is very useful to the lives and productivity of property and human beings. Perhaps similar extrapolations can be made to public property as I have to human beings, although most likely with a different approach. I suppose it's not surprising, given my background, that I've come to favor a quantitative approach to morality. I am an engineer by training, and not a philosopher. My perspective on morality and moral theories is a relatively amateurish one. But of course, morality is something we must all consider more or less regardless of our expertise. I apologize for my possibly simplistic understanding of these moral theories in my comparison to the production of capital. But I hope such comparisons at least serve as a basis for further argument and discussion if indeed such understandings are flawed. For much of my life, I have been strongly libertarian-oriented, believing it best to have a structure of society where we should all be able to pursue our own goals without harming others. Of course, Our goals do come into conflict with others more or less, and there is a need for determining ways of living in harmony with each other without being at each other's throats. As such, a need for government and social contracts, and correspondingly, a need for their design. But given our ability to pursue our goals, that then begs the question of what should our individual goals be? I found much reward and fulfillment in living a productive life, working hard to pursue the truth and creating something of significance, not just for myself, but for others. I believe it quite fortunate, given my nature, that such a pursuit of work and truth has been a pleasurable one. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't do it. But I also think it fortunate that we have the ability to control, more or less based on our control over nature, what is pleasurable for ourselves. That in finding and believing in a moral goal, we can indeed take pleasure in its pursuit, even in the face of great stress, anxiety, and pain. That we can indeed condition our emotions to our moral beliefs. That indeed our moral principles can take precedent over our initial emotional and hedonistic reactions. I believe capitalism currently lacks a strong moral position when defending itself against other moral imperatives like egalitarianism and utilitarianism. And so I hope that this moral treatise I put forward can perhaps better provide such a defense. That indeed inequality and discomfort can be justified when it is the creation of life and property that is at stake. That capitalism and property rights serves as a great mechanism to the creation of life and property. To attack such principles for the sake of equality and pleasure is to attack such creation. Of these moral imperatives that are in conflict with one another, we must make the choice to determine which is better to pursue.